3 weeks before my only daughter's wedding. The wedding I had already promised to pay $40,000 for. She sent me a text message. I still have it. I could read it to you word for word with my eyes closed. You can come, it said. If you still pay. But don't expect a seat up front. I read it twice, standing in my own kitchen. 64 years old, in the socks I worn to work that morning. And then I typed back 6 words. 6 words that I meant with my whole heart. Then I'll keep the 40,000. And you can keep the seat. She called me 1 hour later, crying so hard she could barely get the words out, begging me to tell her what I'd done. But by then it was already too late. Because the second I hit send on that message, I did not sit down and cry. I picked up the phone. And I made one call. And in the 60 minutes between her text and her tears, a wedding that 2 families had spent 8 months planning came quietly, completely apart. And I never raised my voice one single time. Welcome back to our channel, where the woman they treat like the help is almost always the one holding the contract. My name is Linda Harris. Stay with me all the way to the end of this one because I promise you the ground holds. Drop a comment down below and be sure to subscribe. Let me tell you who I am first. Because you're going to need to understand my hands before you can understand the rest. I built a company out of a single mop. I'm not being poetic when I say that. When my daughter Emily was 4 years old, her father decided that being a father wasn't the life he'd had in mind, and he left the 2 of us with the rented half of a duplex and $41 in a coffee can. I had no degree. I had no savings. What I had was a strong back, a rusted-out station wagon, and a willingness to do the work that nobody in a nice part of town wanted to do. So I started cleaning offices at night. One client, a little dentist's office out on Route 9 that paid me $60 a week to make it shine. And I cleaned that office on my hands and knees, with my baby girl asleep in a playpen in the waiting room, because I couldn't afford a sitter, and I was not about to leave her. I scrubbed that floor like it was the only floor in the world. And the dentist noticed. And he told a friend. And the friend told a friend. 35 years later, Harris Commercial Cleaning has 60 employees, a fleet of vans and contracts with half the office parks in the county. I've handed dozens of single mothers their very first steady paycheck. I pay for their health insurance. And I am proud of it the way you can only ever be proud of a thing that cost you everything you had. And it shows. It shows in my hands. My hands are not soft. The knuckles are swollen. There's a callus on my right thumb that's been there for 40 years, from wringing out mops and gripping a steering wheel before the sun came up. For a long time I was ashamed of these hands. I used to tuck them under the table at nice restaurants. I don't do that anymore. Because these hands are the truest thing about me. People take one look at hands like mine, and they decide they've read the whole book. Cleaning lady. Salt of the earth. Bless her heart, but not someone you'd seat up front. My daughter's future in-laws decided exactly that about me, the very day they met me. And I'm sorry to tell you, eventually so did my own little girl. But every single one of them forgot one thing. A woman who built a company out of one bucket and one mop reads a contract very, very carefully before she signs her name to it. Hold on to that. We're going to come back to it. Now, I need you to understand something about Emily before I tell you what she did, because if I don't, you're going to hate her. And I don't want you hating her more than her own mother does. Which is to say, not at all. I raised that girl alone, and I would have walked into traffic for her. I gave her everything I had. At first that wasn't money because there wasn't any. So I gave her the other things. I never missed a recital. Not one. Even when I came straight from a job in my work clothes, and sat in the back row smelling like floor stripper and bleach, while the other mothers in their nice coats gave me a wide berth. I sat there and I clapped until my rough hands hurt. I put her through college $100 at a time. And she grew up smart and polished and ambitious. And a little ashamed, I think, of where she'd come from. The way children sometimes are when they start to climb. Somewhere along the way, she started telling people my mother's in facilities management, instead of my mother cleans offices. And I let it slide. Because pride is a complicated thing in a child who watched her mother scrub toilets to keep the lights on. And then she met Brad Worthington. And everything changed. The Worthingtons were old money. Or the memory of old money. Which I would soon learn is a very different and a far more dangerous thing. Big name in our county. 3 generations of it. A grandfather who'd owned mills. A family that used to summer in places with names that knew people, that wore their last name like a crown they'd been born wearing. And Emily fell in love with Brad. And, if I'm honest, a little bit in love with the whole shining world he came from. The ease of it. The belonging. And I was happy for her. I truly was. My girl. Marrying into a family that would never once have to count pennies the way the two of us had counted them. I met his mother, Margaret, at a dinner to celebrate the engagement. I wore my good dress. I brought flowers. I had made up my mind that I was going to be liked. Margaret took my hand, my rough hand in her smooth, cool one, for exactly as long as politeness required. And not 1 second longer. Brad tells us you're in cleaning, she said. And she said the word cleaning the way you'd say the name of a mild illness. How industrious. 35 years, I told her. I built it myself. How nice, she said, that there's such steady demand for that sort of thing. And she turned to talk to someone who mattered. And that was the whole relationship. Right there. In the first 90 seconds. But here is the thing about the Worthingtons that I did not know yet. The thing that took me months to understand. And when you finally understand it, the whole story turns inside out. I'll tell you when we get there. Just remember, for now, nobody pays close attention to what the cleaning lady is hearing. I offered to pay for the wedding before anyone even asked. $40,000. Every cent of it earned on my knees. It was going to be the proudest check I ever wrote in my life. But I want to tell you exactly how I paid it. Because this is the part that nobody saw. This is the part that mattered. I did not hand anybody a check for $40,000. I have never in my entire life handed another human being a blank check. And I certainly was not about to start with people who looked at me the way Margaret Worthington looked at me. So I did it the way I do everything in my business. I became the customer. Every single vendor, the venue, the caterer, the florist, the photographer, the band, I signed those contracts myself. Linda Harris, responsible party. I paid the deposits out of my company account. I negotiated the terms. And because 35 years in business has taught me that a contract is the only promise that still holds up after people stop being nice to you, I had my lawyer read every single one before I signed it. Diane Foster has kept my company out of trouble for 20 years. And when she read the venue contract, she circled something in red pen, and she looked at me over the top of her glasses, and she said something whose weight I would not understand for almost a year. Linda, she said, you're the sole responsible party on every one of these. And look at these cancellation terms. You're more than 90 days out. If you ever decided to pull the plug on any of this, you get nearly all of these deposits back. And nobody else has the authority to spend a dime of this money but you. Why on earth would I pull the plug, I said. It's my daughter's wedding. No reason, Diane said. And she capped her pen. Just so you know where the door is. It's always good to know where the door is. I put all of those contracts into a green accordion folder, the one I keep for important things, and I filed it away up on a shelf. And I forgot every word she'd said. I would remember every single one of them 3 weeks before the wedding. At 11 o'clock at night. With my phone in my hand. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The takeover happened the way these things always happen. Slowly. And then all at once. And always dressed up as help. First, Margaret just had a few thoughts about the venue. Then a few thoughts about the flowers. Then about the guest list, which swelled and swelled with Worthington cousins and Richard's business contacts until my side, my sisters, my employees, the women who had actually held me up for 30 years, got squeezed down to a small handful of seats near the back. It's just that we know so many people, dear, Margaret explained to me. And you understand, a wedding is really about the families coming together. The Worthington name carries certain expectations. Bit by bit, the wedding I was paying for stopped being Emily's and mine, and quietly became the Worthingtons. The invitations went out with their family crest printed on them. When the engagement ran in the local paper, it described my daughter as marrying into the prominent Worthington family. And it mentioned that the Worthingtons would be hosting. With my $40,000. I call Emily to ask about one little detail, the cake, the colors, and she'd say so gently, oh, Margaret already took care of that, Mom. She just has such a good eye for these things. Such a good eye. With my money. And I kept telling myself it didn't matter. Let Margaret have her crest and her expectations. The point was Emily, happy marrying a man she loved. If getting quietly elbowed to the side was the price of my daughter's joy, then I'd pay that too. The way I paid every other price in my life. On my knees. Without a word. That's what I told myself. What I could not yet see was the difference between stepping back so your child can shine and being slowly, deliberately erased from your child's life by people who wanted your wallet and could not stand your face. I was about to learn that difference. And I was going to learn it from a printed seating chart. Remember that green folder up on the shelf? We're getting closer to it now. Now, before that seating chart, I want to ask you something. Because I have thought about this 1,000 times since. Tell me in the comments. And be honest. If your own child sent you a message telling you to pay for their wedding but to sit in the back, would you have done it anyway? Would you have written the check and taken your seat in row 6 and kept the peace? Or would you have done what I did? There's no wrong answer here. I just want to know who I'm talking to tonight. I read every single comment. Because for 8 months I would have written the check. You have to understand. The seating chart wasn't the first cut. It was just the last one. There had been 100 small cuts before it. At the engagement dinner there was a slideshow. The happy couple set to music. Full of Worthington family photographs going back 3 generations. And not one single picture of me. 18 years of raising that girl all by myself. And I was not in the story they were telling about where she came from. Not one frame. At the dress fitting, the dress that I paid for, I was asked to wait in the lobby, while Margaret and Emily and the bridesmaids did the important part. I sat in that lobby for 2 hours with an old magazine. The woman who bought the dress parked out front like a hired driver. And every single time I swallowed it. And every single time I told myself the same thing. It's not about you, Linda. It's Emily's day. Don't make it about you. And that right there is the trap. That is the trap that catches every decent mother who ever lived. They count on your love to make you swallow your own erasure. They count on you being too good a mother to ever make a scene. Your decency becomes the leash they walk you on. I'd been on that leash for 8 months, calling it love. And then the seating chart landed in my phone by accident, and for the very first time it wasn't a feeling I could talk myself out of. It was a fact. Printed in black and white. With my name on it. It was a Tuesday night. My feet were up. My phone buzzed. Somebody had shared a draft of the seating chart to a group thread that, by mistake, still had me on it. And I scrolled down. And I found my name. Row 6. Behind the Worthington cousins. Behind Richard's banker. Behind a state senator I had never met. And would never meet. At my own daughter's wedding. The wedding I was paying $40,000 for. Row 6. I called Emily about it. And I want you to know, I tried the calm, reasonable mother-to-daughter way first. I always try that way first. Sweetheart, I said. I just saw the seating chart. I think there's been a mistake. It's got me down in row 6. And there was a pause on the line. And that pause told me everything. Because it was not a mistake. Oh, Mom, she said. Her voice was careful. Rehearsed almost. So, the thing is, the front rows are kind of spoken for. Margaret's family is really big. And there are some very important people coming on Brad's side and, Emily, I said. I'm the mother of the bride. I know, she said. I know. It's just Margaret feels really strongly that the front should reflect the family's standing in the community. And then my daughter said the thing that I knew was not her own. Because it wasn't her voice that was in it. It was Margaret's. Mom. It's honestly not a big deal where you sit. You'll still be there. Margaret thinks you should just handle the check. And let the people who understand these kinds of events handle the details that matter. Just handle the check. And let the people who matter handle what matters. There it was. The whole thing. Said out loud in my daughter's mouth in another woman's words. I was not a mother. I was a funding source. A checkbook they would tolerate in row 6 for exactly as long as the check cleared. I did not yell. I have never been a yeller. You do not survive what I have survived by yelling. I just said, I see. Let me think about it, Emily. And I hung up the phone. And I sat in my quiet house with my 2 rough hands folded in my lap. I should have known right then exactly what I was going to do. But I gave them one more chance. God help me, I always give one more chance. And that one more chance is what led me to the break room the next morning. And to the one person in my life who has never once let me lie to myself. Her name is Donna. She's been with me for 22 years. She started part-time running a floor buffer. And now she runs 3 of my crews, And she tells me the truth whether I want to hear it or not. Which is exactly what a real friend is for. We were standing in the break room at the warehouse, both of us with our coffee, and I told her, "Row 6. Just handle the check. All of it." And Donna set her cup down. "Hard. Linda," she said. "Listen to yourself. You are paying $40,000 to be told to sit in the back and keep your mouth shut." "It's Emily's day," I started. "It is your money," Donna said. "And it is your daughter. And those people are teaching her to be ashamed of you, using your own wallet to do it. You are financing the very people who look down on you so they can look down on you in more comfort." She shook her head. "My own mother cleaned houses until her back gave out," she said. "And if anybody had tried to put that woman in row 6 at my wedding, paid for or not, I would have walked her up to the front myself and let the snob sit out in the parking lot." I didn't say anything. "You always do this," Donna said. "Softer now. You think being a good mother means disappearing. Doesn't Linda? Sometimes being a good mother means showing your child what a person with self-respect actually looks like. Because she is never going to learn that from those people. She can only ever learn it from you." I drove home that night turning it over and over and over. And I knew Donna was right. I knew it in my bones. And I still was not sure I had it in me to do anything but swallow it one more time. And then at 11 o'clock that very night, my phone buzzed again. And my daughter made the decision for me. Now before I read you that text, let me stop for just one moment. And let me talk to you directly. You, watching this right now. If you have ever built something with your own two hands, a business, a home, a family, one single good thing in this world, and then watch the people you love most treat it like it was nothing, then you already know exactly what was sitting in the middle of my chest that night. That heavy, quiet thing. It isn't anger. Not yet. It's something colder and clearer than anger. If you know that feeling, then you and I are going to understand each other for the rest of this story. So stay with me, because this is the exact moment where everything turns. And here is what I didn't know that Tuesday night. What I only pieced together much later. While I was driving home from that break room, a phone call was happening across town that the Worthingtons very badly did not want me to hear. A phone call about money. Their money. And what it revealed about the Worthingtons was the single most important secret in this entire story. But first, the text. It came in at 4 minutes past 11. I was in my recliner, feet up, aching. And by pure chance, by the grace of God, I sometimes think, that green accordion folder was sitting right there on the side table next to me, where I'd left it after a phone call with Diane about something else entirely. Here is the text. Word for word. "Mom, Margaret and I talked and we really need you to drop the seating thing. It's causing so much stress. You can come to the wedding if you still pay, but don't expect a seat up front. The front is for the Worthington side and the important guests. Please just let this go. It's not about you. You can come if you still pay, but don't expect a seat up front." I read it 3 times, and I waited for the hurt to take me down to the floor, the way it had 100 times that year. But the hurt didn't come. Something else came instead. It came up through me clean and cool and clear, like the first cold glass of water after you've been thirsty for a very long time. And it wasn't rage. And it wasn't grief. It was the exact feeling I get right before I sign a contract I have decided is a good one. It was certainty. And I looked over at that green folder. The folder with my name, Linda Harris, responsible party, on every single page inside it. The folder Diane Foster had handed me with the words, "Always good to know where the door is." I had spent 8 months looking for that door, and swearing to myself I would never use it. My own daughter had just shown me exactly where it was. So I set down the phone, and I picked up the folder. And for the first time in 8 months I stopped being a good sport and I started being a businesswoman. I opened it. Before I answered her. Because I'm a professional. And a professional checks her position before she makes her move. And what I read on those pages, what I had quietly, carefully signed almost a full year before I ever needed it, that is where this whole story turns. So let me tell you exactly what was in that folder. The venue. $10,000 deposit. Final balance not due for 3 more weeks. Cancellation terms, more than 90 days out. And we were sitting at exactly 94 days out, meaning a nearly full refund the moment that date could be rebooked. And a venue that popular could always rebook a Saturday. The caterer. The same. The florist. The band. the photographer. All of them mine. Every one of them cancelable. Every deposit coming home to me, not to anyone named Worthington. Every single thread holding that wedding together ran straight through my signature. Pull me out and there was no wedding. There was just a date, an address, and a family with a fading name and, as I was about to discover, empty pockets. Diane's voice came back to me, clear as a bell. Nobody else has the authority to spend a dime of this but you. So I picked up my phone, and I typed my answer to my daughter. I did not type it in anger. I typed it slowly, the way you write the single most important line of a contract, because I wanted every word of it to be exactly, completely true. Then I'll keep the 40,000, and you can keep the seat. I read it once. I meant it with my whole heart. And I hit send. And then this is the part that matters. This is the part this whole story turns on. I did not sit there and wait for her to call. I did not stew. I did not write a second message. Because I have learned in 40 years of business that the time between making a decision and taking the action, that little gap, is the only place where your nerve can fail you. So I gave my nerve no time at all. I called Diane Foster at 9 minutes past 11 o'clock at night. She answered on the fourth ring, half asleep. Linda, she said. It's after 11. Is the warehouse on fire? No, I said. But I need you to do something for me. And I need to tell you tonight so I don't lose my nerve by morning. And I told her. 8 months, compressed into 90 seconds. Row 6. Just handle the check. You can come if you still pay. Diane was quiet for a moment. And then in a completely different voice, her business voice, the one I pay good money for, she said, okay. What do you want to do? I want out, I said. All of it. The venue. The caterer. Every last one. I'm the responsible party. I want to exercise every cancellation right I have. And I want every dollar that's coming back to me. And I want it started tonight before I can talk myself out of it. You understand what that means, Diane said. There's no wedding. Not at these vendors. Not on this date. I have spent 8 months understanding exactly what it means, I told her. They want my $40,000 and they want me in row 6. They cannot have both. And tonight I get to choose which one I keep. I'll start the calls at 8 a.m., she said. No, I said. Diane, start them tonight. And there was a pause on the line. Because she knew the venue office was closed. The venue has an emergency event line, I told her. Because I read the contract. It's in section 9. And the caterer has an after-hours number. For the exact same reason. I wanted on the record, timestamped tonight, that I, the sole responsible party, am formally beginning the cancellation. I do not want there to be a single morning hour where one of them could call my daughter first, and spin this before the facts are written down. And Diane Foster, 20 years she's known me, she laughed. Softly. With something that I think was respect. You really did read every word of every contract, she said. I read everything before I sign it, I told her. It is the only reason a woman like me ever gets to have anything at all. Nobody hands us the benefit of the doubt. So we keep it in writing. Give me an hour, she said. And she went to work. And while my lawyer went to work, my daughter was about to call. But not yet. First, I need to ask you the hardest question in this entire story. Because somewhere in all of this there was a man. The man my daughter was about to marry. Brad Worthington. And in this entire story, through the slideshow, the lobby, the crest, the seating chart, the text, Brad Worthington never said one single word in my defense. Not one. And not one word in his own bride's defense either. So be honest with me. I want to know which side you land on. Was Brad a coward in those moments? Or was he just a weak man, raised by people who never once taught him any better? A man who genuinely did not know how to stand up? Comment below and tell me. Coward or just weak? Because I went back and forth on it for a long, long time. And what Brad did next, or rather what he kept right on not doing well. You'll see. But first the phone rang. It was 5 minutes past midnight. And it was Emily. While I'd been sitting in my recliner, Diane had been busy. She'd reached the venue's emergency line and gotten through to the event manager. A woman named Rachel. Who, in a twist I'll come back to, turned out to know exactly who I was. Diane told her on the record that Linda Harris, the sole signatory, was formally invoking the cancellation clause. And she sent the email while she was still on the phone. Timestamped 11:31 p.m. Then she did the same with the caterer. And the same with the planner, the very one who had drawn up that seating chart. So picture the timeline. At 11:04, my daughter texted me. 6 past, I answered. At 9 past, I called Diane. And by 11:35, the venue and the caterer both had formal time-stamped notice that the money was being pulled by the only person who had ever had the right to spend it. And at 5 minutes past midnight, my phone lit up. Emily. I let it ring twice. Not to be cruel. Just to steady myself. Mom, she said. And she was already crying. Mom, what did you do? The venue, Rachel called me. She said you canceled. She said your lawyer called. She said the deposits are being refunded, and they're releasing our date. Mom, the wedding is in 3 weeks. What did you do? I did exactly what I told you I would do, sweetheart. My voice was calm. 40 years of staying calm while everything around me screamed. You told me I could come if I still paid, but not to expect a seat up front. And I told you I'd keep the 40,000 and you could keep the seat. I am a woman of my word, Emily. I kept the 40,000. But you can't, Mom. Everything's booked, everyone's invited, Margaret is going to. She was hyperventilating now. Why would you do this to me? And there it was. Why would you do this to me? As though I were the one who had done something. As though 8 months of row 6 and just handle the check had all just been weather. And my one single action was the only cruelty in the whole story. Emily, I said. Gently. I want you to hear me because I'm only going to say this once, and then we're both going to get some sleep. I did not do this to you. I declined to keep doing something to myself. And I let that sit there. I have been treated by people you chose as a checkbook with a pulse. And tonight my own daughter told me, in writing, that I could pay for her wedding, but I could not sit at the front of it. So I made a choice. I chose my dignity over their party. And I would have thought that you, of all the people in this world, would understand why. She didn't understand. Not that night. That night, she was still too far inside the Worthington world to see it. And too frightened of what Margaret would say. You're being selfish, she said. And I could hear that it wasn't even her, it was the script. It's my wedding and you're blowing it up over a chair. Chair, I said. Quietly. Emily. It was the front row. At your wedding. The seat your father should have been sitting in, except he left. So it was just mine. The one seat in that entire room that belonged only to me. And there was silence. I didn't blow up your wedding, I said. You and Margaret did that, the moment you decided a chair mattered more than your mother. I just stopped paying for the privilege of being told so. She was crying harder now. But it was a different kind of crying. There was confusion in it. The first little crack in the script. The sound of a young woman starting, just barely, to hear herself. We hung up. And I finally went to bed. Margaret called me at 8 o'clock the next morning. I let it go to voicemail. Because I have a company to run and crews to dispatch and because some phone calls you take on your own schedule. That voicemail was a work of art. It opened so gracious. Linda dear. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. And over about 90 seconds it curdled into something with its claws fully out. By the end of it, Margaret was informing me that I had humiliated the family. That I was behaving exactly like the sort of person everyone had always worried I was. And that I would, of course, reinstate everything immediately. As this had gone quite far enough. Reinstate everything immediately. As though I were an employee who'd gone rogue. As though $40,000 of my money were somehow hers to command. I called her back at noon. From the front seat of a cleaning van. In a parking lot. In my work clothes. I want you to picture that. Because the contrast is the entire point. Margaret Worthington in her sitting room. Under a roof she could not afford to repair. And me, in a van that I owned outright with 60 people on my payroll, and a green folder of contracts on the seat beside me. Every page signed in my own hand. Margaret, I said. I got your message. Linda, thank goodness. Now you'll fix this today and we'll all. No, I said. Just that. One word. Come. In a parking lot. From the cleaning lady. And the silence on the other end of that line. That was the sound of a woman realizing, for the very first time, that the help she had been looking down on for 8 months was holding the only checkbook in the room, and had just closed it. What did you say to me? She breathed. I said no, I told her. Now shall I explain it to you? Or shall I let my lawyer? And that is when the Worthingtons had to do the one thing they had been avoiding for 3 full generations. They had to look at their own bank account. Because the second my $40,000 walked out of that room, there was nothing left to plan a wedding with. And it turned out there never had been. Brad, it turned out, made a decent salary, but had not saved a penny of it. He'd been raised to spend like a Worthington, on an income that was nothing of the kind. Richard's business interests were mostly debts, wearing expensive suits. And the grand Margaret Worthington, the woman who shook my hand like she might catch something, had been quietly selling off her jewelry for years, just to keep the lights on in that big cold house. The grand Worthington wedding that the Worthingtons had been planning to host had never once been theirs to host. It was mine. It had always been mine. Every single dollar of it. They had simply gotten so used to my money that they'd started to believe it was a Worthington resource, the way you stop seeing the people who clean your office at night. And now it was gone, and they could not replace it. And the whole gleaming thing, the crested invitations, the senator, the front rows reserved for people who mattered, all of it sat suddenly exposed, as exactly what it had always been. A poor family's pride, propped up the entire time by a cleaning lady's checkbook. And Emily saw all of it. That's the thing. With my money out of the room, the Worthingtons had nothing left to perform with. And the performance was all there had ever been. She watched Margaret rage and scramble and beg. And she watched Brad. And this is the part one thing finally broke her. She watched Brad side with his mother. Not once in that entire terrible week did Brad Worthington pick up the phone to call me. Not once did he put his arm around my daughter and say, "My mother was wrong about yours." He just got quieter. And quieter. The exact same way the weak always get quiet. The exact same way I had watched my own daughter get quiet for months. Except now she was the one watching it being done to her. So there's your answer about Brad. You can decide for yourself whether it was cowardice or just weakness. But my daughter decided something that week. And a few days later she came to my house. Alone. No Brad. No Margaret. No script. She sat down at my kitchen table. The same table where I used to help her with her homework, while my work clothes soaked in the sink behind us. And she looked at my hands. And she started to cry. And this time it was the real kind. The kind with nobody around to perform it for. "I introduced you as facilities," she said. "At the engagement dinner. I heard myself do it. And I just let it happen. I let all of it happen, Mom. The photos. The lobby. The dress fitting. I knew every single time that it was wrong. And I let it happen anyway because I wanted them to think I don't even know better than where I came from. I know, baby," I said. "I watched you want it. And I understood it. I grew up poor too. Wanting out is the most human thing there is. You should hate me," she said. "I told you to pay and sit in the back. Who does that? Who says that to their own mother? A scared girl," I told her. "A scared girl being coached by frightened people. I never hated you. Not for 1 second. I was just waiting for you to come back to yourself." She put her face in her hands. "I watched Brad not defend me all week," she said. "His mother said horrible things about you. And he just sat there. And I thought, that's me. That is exactly what I've been doing to you. Just sitting there. And now you know how it feels," I said. Gently. "And that, Emily, that is not nothing. That is the most expensive lesson I ever bought you. And it was worth every single penny I didn't spend." But the Worthingtons were not done. Because people like Margaret cannot leave a closed door closed. And a few days later she showed up at my house, to have the last word. And my daughter was there to watch it. She arrived unannounced, with Brad trailing in behind her, like a man walking to his own scolding. I let them in. Because I am not afraid of anyone in my own kitchen. And because Emily was there. And I wanted my daughter to see this with her own 2 eyes. Margaret swept in the way you'd inspect a property you might possibly condescend to buy. She took in my modest kitchen, my linoleum floor, the work boots by the door, and I watched her file every bit of it under beneath me. "Linda," she said, sitting down at my table without being asked, "we are going to sort this out like adults. You've made your little point. Everyone is very impressed by your independence. Now you'll restore the funding. And we'll find you a perfectly nice seat. Perhaps not the very front, but somewhere dignified. And we'll put this whole unpleasantness behind us. The invitations are already out. The Worthington name is on the line. The Worthington name. Always, always the name. I poured 3 cups of coffee. I set them down. And I sat across from her, with my rough hands wrapped around my own cup. Margaret, I said. Let me make sure I understand your offer correctly. You would like me to pay $40,000. And in exchange I may sit somewhere dignified, but not the front. Have I got that right? That is more than reasonable. It's the same offer, I said. You've just used nicer words this time. And the answer is still no. And that is when Margaret Worthington's polish finally cracked. And the thing underneath came out. And my daughter got to see it. Bear. Do you have any idea, Margaret said, her voice rising, what it has cost this family to absorb this marriage? To explain to people that my son is marrying the daughter of a woman who scrubs floors for a living? We have given your daughter a name, access, a future. The very least you could do is fund the celebration quietly, and let the people who actually understand society handle it. Careful, I said. Soft. But something in it stopped her. Only one family in this entire arrangement, I said, has been grasping at the other one's money. And it was never mine. I never asked you for a single dime. You needed $40,000 from me, to throw a party you could not afford so that you could feel like the somebody your bank account says you no longer are. She went white. Then red. That is a lie, she hissed. Is it, I said. And I turned to her son. Brad. Look at your mother. And tell me the Worthingtons can write a $40,000 check today. Go on. Tell me, and I will apologize to her right now, and put every dollar back this afternoon. And Brad Worthington looked at the table. And he did not say one word. And the silence said all of it. And my daughter watched her fiancé sit there in that silence, while his mother called her mother common. And I saw on Emily's face, the exact moment that the shining Worthington world lost its shine. For good. And then I reached over to the counter. And I picked up the green folder. And I set it on the table between us. And I opened it. And I laid the contracts out one at a time, the way you lay your cards down when the hand is already won. These are the contracts for your son's wedding, Margaret, I said. The venue. The caterer. The florist. The band. The photographer. Go ahead. Read the signature line on any one of them. She didn't move. So I read it for her. Linda Harris. Linda Harris. Linda Harris. Everyone. Not Worthington. Not Emily. Not Brad. Mine. I am the responsible party on every page, I said. Because I am a businesswoman. And a businesswoman does not hand frightened, grasping people $40,000, and simply trust them to be kind. You spent 8 months treating me like a checkbook. But not one of you ever once read the checkbook. If you had, you would have seen that the cleaning lady was holding the only authority in this entire wedding. I could have taken your front rows and your senator and your crested invitations off the board on any day I chose. I just hoped right up until Tuesday night that I would never have to. And I squared the stack. You told my daughter to tell me that I should just handle the check, and let the people who matter handle what matters. So that is exactly what I did. I handled the check. I took it home. Now you handle what matters. The venue. The caterer. The guests. The senator. Without it. And I closed the folder. Let me know how that goes. Margaret stood up so fast her chair scraped across my floor. She was shaking not with sorrow, with the very particular fury of a person who has just discovered that the floor was never theirs. You will regret this, she said. You have humiliated us. Do you have any idea what people are going to say? That the Worthington wedding fell apart because the bride's mother, the cleaning woman, threw away $40,000, rather than sit in row 6. Yes, I said. Come. That is exactly what people are going to say. And every single working person who hears it is going to understand me completely. You should worry a great deal less about what people will say, Margaret, and a great deal more about what's true. And I stood up too, so that we were eye to eye. In my linoleum kitchen. You wanted my money and not my face, I said. And you cannot have the one without the other. Not anymore. Those days are over. And the seat, she spat, grasping for any wound she could still reach. You did all of this. You destroyed your own daughter's wedding. Over a seat. And I looked at her. And I said the thing I had been carrying in my chest since 4 minutes past 11, on a Tuesday night. You keep the front seats, I told her. All of them. The senator. The cousins. The people who matter. Keep every chair in that room. I'll keep my $40,000. And I'll keep my dignity. And I held up my hands. My rough, swollen, beautiful hands. And do you know the strangest thing, Margaret? These hands cost me exactly the same to earn. 40 years of these hands bought both the money and the dignity. And I am not about to spend the one to lose the other. Not for you. Not for a chair. Not even for my own daughter. And from across my kitchen, in a small, clear, completely changed voice, my daughter said, "She's right." And the whole room turned to Emily. She was standing by the counter, where she had been silent the entire time, watching, and something in her had finally finished changing. "She's right, Margaret," Emily said again, steadier this time. "And I am ashamed it took me this long to say it." And she looked at Brad. "All week," she said, "I waited for you to defend her. Or me. Or anything at all. And you just sat there. The same way I sat there for 8 months while your mother treated mine like the staff. And then my daughter walked across that kitchen. And she came and she stood next to me, next to the cleaning lady, right in front of the Worthingtons. And she took my rough hand in hers. The way no one in that gleaming family had ever once done. I would rather have row 6 next to my mother," Emily said, "than the whole front row next to people who would put her there. I think you should both go now," she told them. "And Brad, don't call me tonight. I need to think very hard about whether I want to marry a man who watched his mother do this, and said nothing. Because I already know one woman who would never sit silent while someone she loved was disrespected." And she squeezed my hand. "I'm related to her," Emily said. "I forgot that for a while." They left. They did not slam the door. People like that never do. But it was the very last time Margaret Worthington ever sat at my kitchen table. Now, let me give you the ledger. Because I know you want to know how it all shook out. And I have always believed in a clean and honest ledger. The $40,000 came home. Most of it within a few weeks. Rachel, the event manager, rebooked that Saturday inside of a month, so the venue refunded the deposit in full, and the other vendors followed, minus a few small and fair fees that Diane negotiated down even further. Linda Harris, responsible party, got every dollar she could back. Right where it had been earned. The grand Worthington wedding never happened. There was no version of it that the Worthingtons could pay for themselves, which is, when you think about it, the entire truth of the Worthingtons in one single sentence. The crested invitations went into a drawer. The senator went to somebody else's party. And the engagement ended. Not in a blow-up. In a fade. Which is how weak things always end. Brad never did call to defend Emily or me or even himself. And a few weeks later my daughter gave the ring back. I kept waiting for him to turn into a man who would stand up, she told me. And I finally realized I was just watching a documentary about my own life. And I did not want to marry the very thing I had been trying so hard to stop being. And Margaret told everyone who would listen that the cleaning woman had destroyed the wedding out of spite and class resentment. Let her. Every single person in this county who has ever worn a name tag to work knows exactly what happened, and exactly whose side they are on. You do not get to spend 40 years cleaning a community's offices, without that community knowing precisely who the grasping one really was. It was not me. It was never me. But I haven't told you yet what I did with the $40,000. And that is the best part of the whole story. Because here is what Emily's father never understood about money. And what Margaret Worthington will never understand, as long as she lives. I gave it to my daughter. All of it. But not for a party. I put it toward the down payment on a little house. Her house. In her name. With her, and only her, on the deed and on the mortgage. A place that no mother-in-law on this earth could ever seat her in row 6 of. Because it was hers. The money I would have spent on one single beautiful afternoon of being treated like the help, I spent it instead on giving my daughter the one thing I never had at her age. A door of her own that locked. In a home that nobody could ever take away from her. You should keep it, Mom, she said when I told her. You earned it. You earned it on your knees. I did earn it on my knees, I said. And there is no one on this earth I would rather get up off my knees for than you. That is what the money was always for, baby. It was never for a wedding. It was for you. It just took the two of us a long, hard road to remember it. And in the entryway of that little house, she hung up one small framed thing. She took the photograph herself. It's a picture of my hands. The swollen knuckles. The callus on the thumb. And underneath it, in her own handwriting, she wrote 4 words. These built everything. And they did. They surely did. Now let me ask you the last thing I'm going to ask you tonight. And this one is just for you. What did you build with your own 2 hands? The thing that money could never buy. The business. The home. The garden. The quilt. The family. The one good thing you made yourself that somebody somewhere once tried to make you feel small about. I want to hear about it. Tell me down below in the comments. Because I read every single one. And I promise you the people in that comment section understand exactly what your hands are worth. Even on the days the world pretends that it doesn't. Tell me about it. Now I know some of you. I know that some of you are sitting there right now just a little bit upset with me. Not at Margaret. At me. Because some of you are thinking, Linda, your daughter told you in writing to pay for her wedding and sit in the back. And you forgave her. You bought her a house. Did she really earn that? Wasn't it all just a little too easy? And I'll be honest with you. I have asked myself the very same thing. Emily said she was sorry. And I believe that she meant it. She took my hand in front of the people she was most afraid of. And that is not nothing. That cost something real. But did one good week and one true sentence wipe out 8 months of watching me be erased and saying nothing? I don't know that it did. I'm not sure that it's supposed to. It wasn't quite forgiveness. Not all the way. Not yet. But it just might have been the beginning of it. And I am going to let you be the judge of whether she earned it. Tell me down below. I genuinely want to know if you think I got it right. Emily and I are closer now than we have been since she was a little girl, falling asleep in a playpen in a dentist's waiting room. The Worthington year was a sickness she had to pass through. And she passed through it. And on the other side of it, she is more herself than she ever was, when she was trying so hard to be one of them. She works with me now. A little. She does the marketing for Harris commercial, the thing she's actually gifted at. Building up the very company that her grandmother's hands started. One mop at a time. And she is not ashamed of it anymore. Just the other day I heard her on the phone telling a vendor. Yes, my mother is the owner. She built it from a single mop. So you'll want to read your contract very carefully. She does. And she winked at me. All the way across the office. I ran into Margaret once. Months later. In the grocery store. Small basket. And for just a second the old reflex crossed her face. That little flinch of someone deciding whether to acknowledge the help. And then she remembered, I think, how it had all turned out. Who had been holding the contract. Whose daughter had chosen whom. And she gave me one small tight nod. And she looked away first. I did not gloat. There is no satisfaction left in it, in the end. Margaret Worthington is a frightened woman. Guarding an empty name. And that is a harder life than mine for all of her heirs. I have 60 people who count on me. A daughter who took my hand. And a company built by these 2 ruined, beautiful hands. I would rather be the cleaning lady. I have always rather been the cleaning lady. It is the truest thing I have ever been. So I just nodded back at her. Polite. And I went on with my shopping. Because I had a house to help my daughter furnish. The good kind of spending. The kind where the gift and the giver get to stay in the same room. And if there is one single thing I could hand to you out of this entire story, let it be this. Your generosity is a gift. It is not a tax. The day someone tries to keep your open hand but turn away your face, the day they want what you can give them, but not who you actually are, that is the day your kindness has been turned into a leash. And on that day you set it down. You love people with everything that you have. You give until it feels good in your chest. But you never ever pay for the privilege of being treated as less. Keep your dignity and your generosity in the same hand. They cost you the very same to earn. Don't you let anyone in this world convince you to spend the one to keep the other. That's my story. One text message. One phone call to my lawyer. And $40,000 that came home. If it reminded you that your worth was never ever up for a vote, then take that as your sign tonight. Leave me a comment and tell me your own story. Hit that subscribe button and stay with me. And I'll see you next time.